I always believed weddings brought out the best in families. At least that's what I used to think whenever I watched my cousins get married over the years. Everyone gathering close, hugging, posing for pictures, passing slices of cake, sharing stories like nothing else mattered. My aunts would cry in that soft, sentimental way older women do when they remember raising children who somehow turned into adults overnight. I imagined mine would feel like that too. Maybe not flawless. My family had never been perfect, but I thought we could at least manage something decent, something respectful. But life has a way of shaking you right when you think your footing is steady. The day before my wedding started quietly. I had flown home from Virginia 2 weeks earlier after finishing a stretch of work on base. Nothing dramatic, just routine duties, paperwork, and training evaluations. My leave had been approved without issue. My fiancé, David, had already been in town for a few days, staying with his parents in their comfortable ranch-style house just a few blocks from the old white steeple church where we planned to marry. For a moment, everything looked like a perfect postcard. Mid-June sunlight, church bells ringing softly on the hour, neighbors trimming hedges, kids laughing as they ran through sprinklers. Even my parents seemed manageable. Not warm, not affectionate, but calm. They had always been distant with me, especially after I joined the military. Still, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this wedding could be the bridge we needed. By late afternoon, I sat at the kitchen table with my mother, going over last-minute details. She focused more on her list than on me, but her voice stayed polite. My father moved in and out of the room, barely acknowledging me except for a low grunt when he opened the refrigerator. My brother Kyle sat nearby, scrolling loudly through his phone, the way he always did when he wanted attention without earning it. The whole house felt stiff, like everyone was avoiding something unspoken. Still, I held on to hope. I had spent most of my life hoping they would meet me halfway. Around 6, I went upstairs to check my dresses. Yes, dresses. I had 4 of them hanging neatly in garment bags along the wall of my childhood room. A satin A-line, a lace mermaid cut, a simple crepe gown, and a vintage piece I had found in a boutique in Chesapeake. I wasn't the type to dream of princess gowns, but I liked having options. David loved seeing me happy, so he encouraged it. The room smelled the same as it always had, cedar and worn carpet. Familiar. I remember unzipping the first bag just to look at the dress again, imagining how it would feel in the morning when I put it on. I even laughed quietly, feeling that light flutter of excitement I thought I had lost. I didn't know that would be the last peaceful moment my family would give me. Dinner passed in silence more than anything else. My father barely spoke. My mother hovered over Kyle. He teased me once, something small and stupid, but I ignored it. I told myself I would let things go, just for this weekend. By 9, I went to bed early. Weddings start early in towns like ours. David called to say goodnight, and for a moment, everything felt steady again, safe. I fell asleep believing the morning would bring something good. Sometime around 2 in the morning, I woke to whispers, soft, deliberate. My bedroom door clicked shut, footsteps moved down the hallway. At first I thought it was a dream, but then something felt wrong. The faint smell of disturbed fabric, the air itself felt unsettled, too still, too quiet. I sat up, turned on the lamp, and looked toward the dresses. The bags didn't hang the same way anymore. One sagged oddly, another was partially unzipped. My chest tightened. I stood and crossed the room, pulling open the first zipper. The dress inside had been cut clean through the bodice, split in half. The bottom edges were jagged where the scissors must have slipped. My breath disappeared. I opened the second bag. Cut. The third. Cut. The fourth. Destroyed completely. I don't remember lowering myself to the floor, but suddenly I was there, my hands pressed against the carpet. Then I heard someone behind me. My father stood in the doorway. His expression was calm, not angry, not guilty, calm, almost satisfied. "You deserve it," he said quietly. "You think wearing a uniform makes you better than this family? Better than your sister, better than Kyle, better than me?" I tried to speak, but nothing came out. My mother stood behind him, her eyes turned away. Kyle lingered in the background, arms crossed, wearing that same smug half-smile he always wore when he wasn't the one being targeted. "Get some sleep," my father added. "The wedding's off." Then they left. The door closed, and for the first time in years, after deployments, after loss, after long nights in unfamiliar places, I felt something I hadn't felt since I was a child. I felt alone. But it didn't end there, and it didn't break me, not even close. I didn't sleep after they left. I stayed on the floor, surrounded by torn fabric and shredded lace. The room felt smaller, tighter, as if it was closing in. But something inside me was shifting, slowly, steadily, like something waking up. I had endured worse. Not the kind of pain that leaves scars on skin, but the kind that eats at your sense of worth. And still I stood. Around 3 in the morning, I got up. My legs were unsteady, but my mind was clear. The dresses were beyond repair. My father had made sure of that. Fine, let them stay ruined. Let them lie there as proof of everything my family thought I didn't deserve. I started packing, slow, methodical, the way I had been trained. Shoes, toiletries, documents, the small framed photo of David, the card he gave me. Whatever tomorrow looks like, I'll be waiting. I placed it carefully into my bag. Then I reached deeper into my closet, past everything forgotten, and pulled out the one garment bag I kept for moments that required strength. My uniform. White dress uniform, pressed to perfection, every button polished, every ribbon aligned, every piece earned. I unzipped it just enough to see the shoulder boards. 2 stars, a rank I never spoke about, a rank my parents never acknowledged. They never respected what I had built, but that uniform did. By 4, I was downstairs. The house was silent. A lamp glowed faintly in the living room. Maybe my mother had left it on, expecting me to come down broken. I didn't. I stepped outside into the cool night air. The sky was dark, filled with stars, another dawn waiting to arrive. I got into my car and drove, not sure where at first, but instinct took over. I went to the one place that had never judged me. The base, where respect was earned, where dignity mattered. At the gate, the guard recognized me instantly. His posture straightened. "Ma'am, everything all right?" he asked. I paused, swallowing. "Just needed to clear my head," I said. He nodded. "Welcome back, ma'am." Inside, everything was quiet. I walked toward the flag, the gravel crunching under my feet. Then I heard a voice behind me. "Couldn't sleep either?" It was Master Chief Hollander. He studied my face, understanding more than I said. "Rough night?" he asked. I didn't lie. "My parents destroyed my dresses," I said quietly. "All of them." He nodded slowly. "Families can be cruel in ways strangers never are." I looked down. "I don't know what to do next." "That's not true," he replied. "You came here. That means you already know." He gestured toward my bag. "That uniform is who you are. They tried to cut your identity, but they can't touch that." I let out a small, unsteady laugh, the first real feeling since it all happened. He gave me a nod. "Go get ready. Let them see you." I went to the guest quarters, clean, quiet, safe. I laid everything out with precision. When I put the uniform on, it didn't feel heavy, it felt right. The sun began to rise, light catching the metal on my chest. I looked in the mirror. I didn't see someone broken. I saw someone standing. By the time I stepped outside, the morning had fully arrived. Calm, still. I checked the time. 7:30, enough time to get to the chapel before the rumors spread too far. I drove through town, everything looking normal, but inside me, something had changed. When I reached the church, the parking lot was already filling. People turned as I stepped out, first confusion, then recognition, then silence. David's mother approached me first, pulling me into an embrace. "What did they do to you?" she whispered. David followed, touching my collar gently. "You look like yourself," he said. "I'm proud of you." I walked into the chapel alone, not lonely, just certain. Inside, the air was cool. Guests turned to watch, and there, near the altar, stood my parents. Shock spread across my mother's face. My father stiffened. Kyle let out a loud comment that cut through everything. The room went silent. Veterans recognized the uniform instantly. Whispers spread. My father's face drained of color. For the first time, he truly saw me, not as his daughter, as something more. I stepped forward, every movement controlled. I stopped where a bride would stand. Then I spoke. "This," I said, touching one ribbon, "is what you tried to cut." No one moved. No one spoke. The truth stood there, solid and undeniable. My mother stepped forward, her voice shaking. "You should have told us." I answered calmly. "I did." My father muttered, "You're overreacting." "Am I?" I replied. Kyle tried to dismiss it, but the room turned against him. I told him plainly, "You helped." He couldn't deny it. My father stepped forward, ready to regain control, but he didn't get the chance. David's father stood, his voice steady and commanding. "That young woman has given more than most here," he said, "and you humiliated her." Silence followed. I took a breath and spoke clearly. "Last night you destroyed my dresses, all of them, and you told me I deserved it." Gasps filled the room. My mother tried to excuse it. I didn't let her. My father accused me of embarrassing the family. I lifted my chin. "This uniform is the reason I stand here, the reason people respect me, the reason you sit safely in this room." He asked if I thought I was better than them. I answered honestly, "No, I just stopped believing I was less." An older relative stood and spoke in my defense. The room shifted. Support replaced silence. The officiant stepped forward gently. "Would you like to continue?" he asked. "Yes," I said. But before the words settled, my father stood abruptly, pointing at me. "This isn't right," he said. "A wedding shouldn't look like this." I turned to him. "What part isn't right? The fact that I showed up? Or that I'm still standing?" He faltered. "You humiliated your mother," he said weakly. I raised an eyebrow. "Or did that start when you cut my dresses?" Murmurs spread again. My mother broke into tears, not regret, shame. My father snapped at her. "Kyle accused me of ruining everything," I answered calmly. "The dresses were destroyed, all 4. He couldn't deny it. My father insisted I was lying, but a veteran stood and spoke firmly. "If she says it happened, and your reaction says everything." My father stumbled over his words. My mother slowly lowered her hands, her face streaked with smeared makeup, her expression strained. She looked around at the congregation, the onlookers, who suddenly saw her clearly without filters or tall tales. Her voice came out brittle. "It wasn't supposed to go this far." My chest tightened, not from pity, but from recognition. She wasn't apologizing. She was regretting exposure. I took a breath. "What," I asked gently, "was it supposed to do? Break me enough to cancel the wedding? Teach me a lesson?" She looked down at her shoes. Her silence was answer enough. My father's composure finally snapped. His voice rose, not to yell, but in that harsh whisper men use when they're humiliated in public. "You were supposed to be grateful for everything we've done." "What you've done," I interrupted quietly, "or what you've taken credit for." His face reddened. "Watch yourself." "I have," I said, "my entire life." A murmur spread again among the guests, a soft wave of approval, not noisy, but unmistakable. I looked at the officiant and then back at the crowd. "Before we continue," I said clearly, "I want to make one thing clear." Every pair of eyes focused on me. This wedding is going forward, but I am not walking down that aisle with people who tried to sabotage my life less than 24 hours ago. My father stiffened. You can't exclude us. I lifted my chin, steady as stone. I can, and I am. My mother gasped softly. Kyle's mouth dropped open. You think you're something special now? My father spat. No, I answered. I think I finally stopped pretending I'm not. The chapel doors creaked open from behind, interrupting the tension. A figure stepped in, tall, silver-haired, dignified, retired Rear Admiral Thomas Caldwell, one of my earliest mentors, and someone I'd quietly invited to the wedding. He hadn't told me if he'd make it, but here he was. The moment he saw me standing there in dress whites, his eyes softened. He walked down the aisle with the kind of quiet authority only older Americans possess, the kind earned through time, lost discipline, and love for a country that took pieces of them long before it gave anything back. He stopped beside me. "Ma'am," he said, voice warm and deeply respectful, "do you have someone to walk you?" My breath caught. I shook my head. He offered his arm. "Then allow me." My mother let out a soft cry, real this time. My father's posture broke like a snapped branch. Kyle looked away, unable to sit in the truth any longer. Older members of the chapel nodded approvingly. A few wiped their eyes. Someone whispered, "That's what family looks like." I placed my hand gently on Admiral Caldwell's arm, but before we walked forward, I turned back to the people who had caused so much pain. I didn't yell, I didn't blame, I didn't curse them, even though God knew I had reason to. Instead, I said the words I needed to say for myself. "You can stay," I told them, voice soft but unshakable.
"But you will not dictate my life anymore. Not today. Not ever again." My father swallowed. My mother clutched her tissue. Kyle stared down at his feet. Then, without another word, I turned forward as the organist, finally understanding what needed to happen, began to play the first notes of the processional. Admiral Caldwell leaned in slightly and whispered, "Proud of you." I blinked rapidly, holding everything together with the kind of poise the Navy had trained into me. "Thank you, sir," I whispered back. The aisle stretched before us, not as a path of ceremony, but as a bridge between who I'd been and who I was choosing to be. My father didn't stand, my mother didn't offer her hand, Kyle didn't speak, but for the first time in my life, I walked forward without waiting for any of them, and I felt free. Walking down that aisle with Admiral Caldwell beside me felt like stepping into a different version of my own life, one where dignity wasn't something I had to fight for, but something I simply carried with me. The organs swelled, the guests rose, and for a brief moment I forgot about the ruined dresses, the scissors, the whispered insults, the years of being the other child. Everything softened. Everything steadied. At the end of the aisle, David stood waiting. His eyes glistened, not with sadness, but with awe. The kind of quiet awe a man feels when he realizes he hasn't just found a partner, he's found an equal. But even as I reached him, even as he took my hands and whispered, "You're incredible," I felt the gravity behind me, the weight of my parents sitting stiffly in their pew, the tension in the room humming like an untuned piano string. Their shame wasn't the kind that taught humility, it was the kind that made people desperate. The officiant welcomed everyone, his voice soothing, trying to stitch calm into a torn morning. "Marriage," he began, "is about commitment, respect, and the courage to choose kindness." I saw my mother flinch. The words landed on her like a confession she didn't mean to make. My father leaned forward, elbows on his knees, looking like a man fighting demons no one else could see.
Kyle stared somewhere at the floor, his jaw tight, eyes shiny with unspoken guilt. But they stayed silent. The ceremony moved forward in peaceful waves, vows exchanged, rings held up in the soft light, voices trembling with sincerity. I felt something lift inside me, a burden maybe, or a chain I'd been dragging for years. When David spoke his vows, his voice steady and warm, I felt like I was stepping into a future that finally made sense. But the moment the officiant said, "If anyone has reason," my father stood. My mother gasped, grabbing his sleeve. Kyle's head snapped up. Whispers thundered through the chapel. The officiant froze mid-sentence. David tightened his hold on my hand. My father's voice cracked open the room. "I have something to say." Every muscle in my body went rigid, not because I feared him, but because I knew this was the last battle of the day, and I wasn't sure if he wanted to apologize, rage, or rewrite history one more time. He swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing hard. His voice faltered. "I didn't raise her right." A hush fell so complete that even the organist lowered his hands. My father cleared his throat again. "We should have been proud," he said, staring at the floor like it might answer him. "We weren't." My mother blinked rapidly, tears collecting at the edges, but refusing to fall. "We didn't understand her," he continued, "her career, her choices, her strength." His voice trembled, and instead of trying, we punished her for it. My heart thudded gently. Not forgiveness, not anger, just a sort of stillness. He forced himself to keep talking. "She's done things we never could, things we never tried. And last night was the worst thing I've ever done." My mother whispered, "Tom," but he held up a trembling hand. "No, she deserves to hear it. They all do." I felt the entire room shift, not toward him, toward me, toward truth. He stared at me like he was seeing the child he'd lost somewhere in the pride he never had. "I thought tearing those dresses would make her small enough for me to understand." A soft gasp swept through the older guests, but she walked in here, and I have never felt smaller in my life. My mother finally broke, then her sob echoing softly in the chapel this time, not embarrassed, not performative, but something fragile and real. Kyle's voice cracked next. "I didn't want to do it," he muttered, eyes burning with shame. "Dad told me to help. I was stupid. I'm sorry, sis." For the first time that morning, tears pushed at my eyes. Not because they apologized, but because I'd never expected it. Not here, not now, not in front of an entire congregation. The officiant stepped back, letting the moment unfold on its own. No lecture needed, no Bible verse. Truth doesn't need narration. I took a slow breath. "Thank you for saying that," I said, voice steady, though my heart trembled. "But this isn't about the dresses anymore." My father's shoulders fell. "I know." "It's about every moment before them," I continued. "The years of being dismissed, the years of being treated as less." My mother nodded weakly, her tears falling freely now. "But I'm not here to punish you," I said quietly. "I'm here to break the pattern." A murmur of approval rose around the chapel, soft, respectful, deeply American in that way, "You're doing the right thing." I looked at my father, truly looked at him, a man who had never known how to love someone stronger than himself, a man raised by a father who saw emotion as weakness, a man who repeated what he learned. "Dad," I said gently, "you can't undo what happened, but you can choose what happens next." His lips trembled. "I want to try." My mother reached for his hand. "For once," she whispered, "so do I." I nodded. The officiant stepped forward once more, clearing his throat gently. "Shall we continue?" I turned to David. He squeezed my hands and whispered, "You're incredible." And for the first time in years, as I faced the altar, not as a wounded child, not as a disappointed daughter, but as a woman fully standing in her identity, I felt something clean and light inside me. Peace, real peace, the kind that doesn't come from being loved perfectly, but from choosing to stop carrying old pain. The officiant smiled softly, lifting his hands. Then let us finish what we started. The ceremony resumed with a warmth that felt almost surreal. After everything that had unfolded, the confessions, the broken pride, the truth finally laid bare, you'd expect the room to feel strained or awkward, but it didn't. It felt lighter, as if the whole chapel exhaled with me. David and I stood side by side, and the officiant's voice settled back into its steady rhythm. He talked about partnership, patience, and the courage it takes to choose love even when life tries to pull you backward. I listened to every word, but with a part of my mind still resting on my parents behind us, on the weight that had lifted from their shoulders, even if they didn't quite know what to do with the sudden emptiness. When the officiant finally said, "You may kiss the bride," David cupped my face gently, careful of the brim of my cover, and kissed me with a soft reverence that made the entire congregation erupt into warm applause. For a moment, all I felt was joy, but weddings last only minutes. Life lasts a lot longer, and reconciliation, real reconciliation, needs time. After the ceremony, the reception hall buzzed with emotion and soft music. Older couples clung to each other a little tighter than usual. A few veterans approached to shake my hand, offering quiet nods and soft, "Proud of you, ma'am," greetings. Women from the church hugged me, their voices hushed with admiration for what they'd witnessed. David's mother held me for a long moment, whispering, "Family can be messy, but they can learn." I hoped she was right. My parents sat together at one of the side tables. They looked smaller than usual, like people who'd been forced to see their reflections in harsh lighting. Not villains, not monsters, but deeply flawed, deeply human. I didn't approach them first. I let them sit with the truth. Eventually, Kyle walked up to me, hands in pockets, shoulders rounded, not with arrogance, but humility I'd never seen from him. "Hey," he muttered. "Hey," he swallowed, voice low. "I shouldn't have touched your dresses. When Dad told me to help, I don't know, I thought it wasn't my place to argue." "It was," I said gently. "It always is." His eyes filled, not crying, but close. "I'm sorry. You didn't deserve any of that." "I know," I answered, "but thank you." He nodded, relief washing over him, as if he'd been waiting his whole life to finally say something honest. Next came my mother. Her makeup was gone, wiped away with her tears, leaving her face strangely fragile. She took my hands. "I was wrong," she whispered. "I was wrong, and I'm ashamed, and I don't know if I can fix it, but I want to try." I felt something soften inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a crack in the armor of old pain. "You can try," I said, "but slowly, respectfully, on terms that don't hurt anymore." She nodded quickly, tears gathering again. "I'll take anything you're willing to give." My father came last. He didn't speak right away. He didn't make excuses. He just stood there, hands shaking slightly, eyes unable to meet mine. When he finally did, his voice was small. "I don't know how to undo what I've done," he said, "but I'll learn if you let me." It wasn't a grand apology. It wasn't poetic. It wasn't what I had dreamed of as a child, but it was real. For the first time in my life, it was real. "We'll take it one step at a time," I told him, "but it has to be different." He nodded. "I'll make it different." And I believed him. Not because of his words, but because of the way he looked at me, not as someone to control, but as someone he finally saw. Weeks passed, then months. David and I settled into a quiet rhythm, balancing married life with my responsibilities on base. My parents called, then they wrote, then they asked to visit, not to demand, not to pry, not to reassert old patterns, but to understand, and slowly, painfully, imperfectly, they changed. They went to family counseling. They listened more than they talked. They learned about the Navy, about my service, about the medals they'd ignored for years. My father even asked to attend a ceremony recognizing one of my junior sailors, standing at the back, hands clasped, watching with new eyes. Kyle called more often. My mother sent handwritten letters. There were awkward moments, missteps, old habits trying to claw their way back in, but every time I held my line with calm firmness. No yelling, no anger, just boundaries. And the strange thing was, they respected them. People don't grow when you scream at them. They grow when you show them what growth looks like. One evening, months after the wedding, my father sat across from me at our kitchen table. He held a mug of coffee like it was some delicate thing that might break. "I always thought strength meant control," he said quietly. "Now I know strength is standing your ground without crushing the people around you." I smiled softly. "It took me years to learn that too." He nodded, shame fading into reflection. "I'm glad you learned first. It saved all of us." For the first time, I believed him. Looking back now, I don't think about the ruined dresses. I don't even think about the scissors or the words, "you deserve it." I think about the chapel doors opening, about my brother's stunned whisper, about the way truth, quiet, steady truth, stripped away years of lies in seconds. I think about how families break and how sometimes they can be put back together. Not the same as before, but better for having been broken. Honor isn't just ribbons on a uniform. Honor is choosing integrity when anger would be easier. Honor is letting hurt end with you, not pass through you. And if my story helps even one person breathe easier, stand taller, or forgive slower but deeper, then everything I lived through has meaning. So if you're listening to this right now and your heart feels heavy, or your family feels cracked in places you don't know how to fix, or you've carried hurt longer than you've carried peace, I hope my story reminds you that it's never too late to rewrite the ending. If this touched you, share your thoughts. And if you'd like more stories like this, you're always welcome to stay a little longer.